Initially, The Twilight of the Gods was going to be a 3D production, but there were challenges that were met during the development. So when I came on, they moved it to a 2D show. I hadn't worked in 2D for many years that I could actually start directing sequences. Well, I mean, I worked on, it's funny because I worked on the first Fast and Furious movie.
Wow.
One.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And honestly, in working with in visual effects films, a lot of the films you have to animate vehicles and digital doubles because that's one of the money spinners of the industry, you know. I'm trying to think of a story that I've...
There must be a story with Zack, so I want to hear.
Oh,
Zack.
Well, Zack is he's a terrific person. I mean, not that I know him that well, you know. I was working with him, but he's extremely enthusiastic and very focused, and has an enormous amount of energy and get up and go, and he really loves his craft. I mean, he loves being a director. He loves the art of cinema.
Hello and welcome to Prolific Perspectives. This is Kamal Hassan, your host and founder of Prolific Animation Studio. We are all about exploring innovation, entrepreneurship, and how to be successful. Today we have an amazing guest with us, worked with many notable projects, led an animation team for The Baby Boss, worked with DreamWorks, Andrew Tamandl. Hey Andrew, how are you?
Oh, good morning, Kamal.
morning.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you with us today.
Lovely to be here.
All right. So, Andrew, please give your brief introduction to our audience so they'll know more about you.
I am currently working as an animation supervisor for DreamWorks Animation Studios. I've been working in the industry probably around 30 years, all up. I started in Australia. I'm Australian from Sydney, and I graduated from art school in 1990. I was a designer for a number of years, working as an art director and a designer and photographic assistant. And then mid-90s, the internet boom happened, and there was a huge need for animation in Australia. So I'd been animating, taught myself how to animate through The Illusion of Life and the Preston Blair books. And I was able to basically get into animation because they could see I could, do drawn animation. And so a couple of years in that industry, doing internet work for internet companies. And then I went to film school, did a master's degree in to learn Softimage and Flame. They were the packages back in the day. And Maya was just being developed. I think it came in just as I was leaving film school. So I did a master's in film school. I did a little film. It did the festival circuit, won a few awards, and got me a job in the United States, where most of the work was being done in California then in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I came over, I worked in a number of different companies for about 15 years. I worked on about 30 feature films, numerous commercials, some gaming material as well. And then in 2015, I decided to do some teaching. I went over and taught as a professor in Savannah College of Art Design for about 18 months, 2 years, and eventually decided to come back to Los Angeles and join DreamWorks. And so from 2016 to 2020, I was with DreamWorks in episodic, working on shows for Netflix. And then I went and did an adult animated series for Zack Snyder and Debbie Schneider and Wes Collier and Netflix.
The Fast and the Furious, the Spy Racers, is that the one?
No, that was for DreamWorks. Now this one was called the Twilight of the Gods. It was an R-rated. It was an adult one. Okay. The Fast and Furious
Twilight
Spy
of the
Racers.
Gods. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember that one. Yeah.
So Fast and Furious Spy Racers was for DreamWorks, and it was a really big deal when they produced it because it was a property that Universal Studios had made a lot of money from, and they're very protective of. And so that was aimed for kids. So that was the show that was aimed for kids. The Twilight of the Gods was definitely not aimed for children. It was quite explicit in its violence and sexual content. And so after that finished, DreamWorks asked me to come back and help out on this new movie called Gabby's Dollhouse, which is a development of a very, very successful series they did called Gabby's Dollhouse.
Gabby Dollhouse,
For
yes.
little, yeah, for little
Hmm.
kids. So basically I'm working on, juniors again. So
Okay.
that's me in a nutshell.
All right. So you have worked in so many areas of animation over your 24 years of career. What aspect of animation are you most passionate about and why? Whether it be like episodic series, feature films, commercials, and even gaming.
Well, I mean, everything is different in regards to every show is different, really, when you boil down to it. And I mean, it depends on the showrunners, it depends on the budget, it depends on the deadline, and the expectations too. What are the expectations of the studio and the creators? So every I've had good and bad experiences in
Mm-hmm.
every in every area. It all
Uh-huh.
depends. It all depends on the mix of how the project's put together. I mean, I suppose some of my highlights have been the first film I worked on was Deep Blue Sea, the first feature. So that was very exciting. I got a write up in Cineflex, which was a magazine that was back in the day for visual effects, and actually in actual fact that a few of the shots I did got celebrated 20 years later as like shots that were kind of groundbreaking for the visual effects industry at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I worked on a show called the Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons
Oh,
under
okay.
David Fincher, and
Mm-hmm.
that was quite groundbreaking at the time too. It won the Oscar for facial animation at Digital Domain. They did incredible work to develop like a very hyper realistic facial performance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I worked on that. I've worked on, let me think what else. Episodic has been fun.
Yeah.
Episodic, the difference between episodic and features is generally you have a lot of time to polish shots on a feature, and you have a lot of input from many different levels of production. In episodic, my role was more of a supervising role, so I was supervising studios, and it's a lot of decision making and a lot of quick decision making and a lot of uh, it's extremely creative. So I really enjoyed being a working in episodic because it's very fast paced and you can't mull over minutia
Absolutely.
in a shot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
So
you were like supervising director for Twilight of the Gods on Netflix. Can you share some
yes.
of the key creative challenges and highlights you encountered while overseeing the series?
Sure. So Twilight of the Gods, I was pulled in on another show for the those particular showrunners, and then they segued me over to Twilight. Initially, the Twilight of the Gods was going to be a 3D production, but there were challenges that were met during the development. So
Mm-hmm.
when I came on, they moved it to a 2D show.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't worked in 2D for many years.
Uh-huh.
So that was a lot of fun and
Mm-hmm.
very exciting to get back into directing for 2D. And the other thing about that show was I asked them, instead of just being an animation supervisor, animation director, that I could actually start directing sequences, which they allowed me to do because the show was still developing. The uh, the show, one of the showrunners, executive producers, Zack Snyder, is a person who is
So how did
very fluid.
how did Snyder's vision influence this series?
Well, Zach was he was instrumental with Jay Oliver and the Netflix executive producers, and they and also oh my God, Eric Caruso, who was the
Eric Crusoe.
writer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they got together and they developed the script and they created the show. Probably about 80% of the show was boarded for 3D. So when I came on, I had to basically reassess how the sequences were developed, were directed, and make it applicable to a 2D show, and how the production pipeline for 2D. So that was one of the first things, and then we had extra extensions on specific episodes. Zack makes his episodes quite long,
Long.
so he
Yeah.
he gets very excited, and he basically sees a lot of opportunities, and he gets creatively stimulated, and he decided to expand certain areas. So that's when I came in, and I actually directed those sequences for him, and then he came on and approved it, and adjusted it to the way he wanted it to be. So the other thing is that, being a supervising director, I also supervised the art department, gave them feedback and direction on to make sure that it would work in 2D, and to make it very cinematic. We wanted to make the show, even though it was a very graphic show, still make it very like a world building show. Developing the characters. So I generally, what I do with any animation show is I look at all the characters, I break down who they are. They literally do a psychological deep dive into them,
Yeah.
and create like a Bible for the partner studio. So all the directors there and the supervisors there understand who these characters are, so that they're like real, that the audience will believe who they are, and then we have consistency throughout the show with performance. So it was a very wide-ranging show. I also gave them a lot of direction in the look and animation style of the 2D visual effects. I've got a whole Pinterest is wonderful. I have to say, I have a whole massive Pinterest library of material that I draw on. And so the only 3D material we used in that show was we were able to get the extra little bit of money to do 3D crowd sequences for this big battle at the end.
Yeah. So as a supervising director, you're responsible for coordinating with several teams and studios.
Correct.
How do you
Yes.
keep the creative vision aligned while ensuring the deadline and budgets are met?
Well, that is the $1 million question, isn't it? Yes,
It
I
is.
mean, it's a lot of juggling. It's truly about expectations. I found that communication is key. You want to, in this respect, I knew Zach's work, and I knew his visual style, so I made sure we were directed to get that very early on, and he approved it all. So it's a lot of touching base with the executive producers at Netflix, the executive producers at the Stone Quarry, which is Zach and Debbie and Wes's company, and also the partner studio. We use a company in France called Zilam, and making sure making sure that everyone is comfortable and happy all the time. So it's constantly checking in. It's constantly checking in. There's always hiccups. There's always things that are unexpected. It's just the nature of creative industries. But also having people skills to make sure that everyone is encouraged and guided, and in the way that we need, to get the final product that everyone's happy in. So yeah, that's
So animation direction seems like it involves a lot of problem solving. How do you approach directing character animation to get the performance just right?
well, for me, I always look at personality, who these characters are. I look at their back, who they,
Story.
where they're from, their
Mm-hmm.
backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have that, you can create, look at the different personality types, like archetypes of people. And years and years and years ago, I did a really terrific seminar for a guy called, what's his name? Ed Hooks, I think his name was. He was a American acting coach, and so he taught about power centers. He taught about status. He's taught about just uh, what do you call it? Mannerisms, right? And that kind of got me on the road to start doing a bit of acting research and also anthropological research. So using all the skills from that actors use, and also from what was that chap's name? He wrote a book. I've forgotten it, but he was a anthropologist, and he wrote a fantastic book about facial expressions. He wrote about gesturing, about the internal unconscious, and all of those things help develop these, an actual character. So, just the way they hold themselves, the way they sit, the way they walk, the way, you develop all of that in early tests for the show. The way they project themselves, if they're nervous, what they do, if they're confident, what they do. So you have like a blueprint for each personality and each character, and you give it to the studio who's going to create the show. When I'm animating personally, that's the first thing I want to know. I'm like, who is this person, right? What are they feeling? What's their motivation in the scene? What's their, what do they want? Right. That's literally what it boils down to.
That makes sense.
And I often grab a whole bunch of different reference from different actors, generally live action performers, not so much
because
animated
that helps
performers.
a lot. That helps a lot if you give live
Correct.
action references. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because I mean, you can see, to the actors, really good actors inhabit a character, and you see their whole energy shift, to whoever these, specific personalities they're trying to portray. A lot of it is, with method. They're drawing from past experience and the unconscious. So I'm very interested in all of that. So I try and give. I mean, I'm not that I go too deep, because animators just want to know what's going, who they are, what they want. But I find personally, I do that too. So if any questions come up, I can go, yeah, this is what this person would do. And then on the same token, every line of the script, I read every line of the script and I break it down. So it's just like as supervising director, you're directing. It's like directing anything. You really have to know what is happening all the time, because you're going to get questions all the time about everything.
So in your time at DreamWorks, you worked on Fast and Furious, Spy Racer. How did you work with your animation team to convey that sense of speed and excitement in the animation sequences?
Well, I mean, I worked on. It's funny because I worked on the first Fast and Furious movie back in 2001.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've honestly, in working with in visual effects films, a lot of the films you have to animate vehicles and digital doubles, because that's one of the big money spinners of the industry, replacing people. And so I had a very good sense of momentum and speed and just what works. And cinematically, I mean, I've got I went to film school. I've got a very good grounding of how cinema works and the basics, composition and color theory and and just movement. So. And I taught it as well, right? I was teaching previs and I was teaching storyboarding and film theory when I was at SCAD, apart from animation as well. So I had a very good grounding with that. So moving into Fast and Furious, I basically, just like I did with characters, I created a blueprint of how to animate the cars. I worked with the riggers. I did rigging in the past in different jobs, so I understand rigging. So we had to make sure the vehicles worked specifically the way they should with the weight and everything. And then, I mean, it's just experience. You just, when you see shots come in, you can tell if it's working right. It's just
Absolutely,
just
absolutely.
from many years of experience.
hmm So, working on so many iconic shows, what's a fun behind the scenes moment or unexpected story from one of your project?
Oh, goodness me. Well, I mean, highlights are like I've met a lot of very talented directors, so that's all been really terrific. I met Clint Eastwood on Flags of Our Fathers. I met David Fincher. I met Zach, and they're all they're all very interesting, terrific people, very talented people. I'm trying to think of a story
There
that I could.
must be a story with Zach, so I want to
Oh,
hear that one.
Zach. Well, he's a terrific person. I mean, not that I know him that well. I was working with him, but he's extremely enthusiastic and very focused, and has an enormous amount of energy and get up and go. And he really loves his craft. I mean, he loves being a director. He loves uh, um, the art of cinema, right? He
hmm
started as a commercials director and I think he went to Art Center here, which is
Yeah.
a school in Pasadena, which is very
hmm
specifically commercial driven, right? Commercially
hmm
driven. It's not really a film school.
hmm
We're going to create you to go out and work in the industry. So he's a person he's like a jack of all trades. While we were making Twilight of the Gods, they were shooting Rebel Moon at the same time, which was this huge science fiction space opera thing. And he was camera operator, he was board artist, he did all sorts of things. So I have to tip my hat because he's an incredibly high energy and or he basically doesn't say no. He just, things need to be done. He goes and does it, type of thing. I mean, I've met a whole bunch of different actors on,
hmm
at things, and
hmm
in the end, people are just people. I think that's literally what I would say. I mean, I don't, I just think it's a very privileged position to be in, working in the entertainment industry. So
Absolutely.
I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. I apologize, but I've had quite a few experiences with. I suppose one of the cool things is travel as well. Working on set or working in different locations. That's been, depending on what part of the production
Production
chain you're
pipeline.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Chain
yeah,
you're in.
you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
you
hmm
basically have that opportunity to do that as well. So yeah.
Got it. So with the rapid evolution of technology in animation,
Mhm.
such as AI and VR, where do you see the industry heading in the next 5, 10 years?
That's $1 million question, isn't it? Because AI is evolving so quickly as a tool, and I mean, I've been watching this for years. This change. I saw a documentary years ago by Ray Kurzweil, who was predicting a singularity happening in 2030, and it's might happen, right? And if you have that situation happen, the AI, what we have now is not just a tool anymore. You're going to have a situation where you're going to have a conscious machine, which I don't know what that means, and I
Yeah.
don't know what that means in the creative industries or
Mm-hmm.
society in general. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, I'm getting into exploring AI. I mean, I have Creative Suite at home, and I've used Firefly many times. I haven't had a chance to really explore the like Sora, Kling, all those bits and pieces to use it in video creation. But I have friends of mine who've been really into it, and
Okay.
they're very, they're very excited creating all these little bits and pieces. I saw maybe about 2 months ago, Meta had this what was it called? I can't remember what the specific software was, but it literally you have your cell phone, you shoot some footage, and it outputs a
But
depth
Andrew,
map.
Andrew, don't you think that AI will always have the IP problem while using AI or implementing AI in our pipelines? I
Well,
would
if
say
you
it will be a helpful tool to streamline the pipeline. However, creating an actual art will always have the IP issues because we're getting a collective information through AI. What are your thoughts
That's
on that?
true. That's true at the moment. But like I said, I don't know when you have creative machines, machines that actually have consciousness, which will happen, uh, then it's like us, right?
Yeah.
So, do they dream? Do they dream? Will they be able to be creative and think completely abstractly? I mean, I don't know. So, but you're right. At the moment, it is literally just what AI does is it. I mean, I have heard there are systems that basically use clouds and they just build things through just random generation. But you are correct. At the moment, it's literally just grabbing whatever and slamming it together to create this new thing. But it is an amalgamation of what's out there at the moment.
I
Yes.
would agree.
So
So,
IP, yeah. I mean, this is going to be a lot of lawsuits,
yeah.
happening.
All right. So, what trends or changes are you most excited about in the animation industry right now?
Well, personally, I mean, I'm not talking about so much the industry because the industry is here in Los Angeles is in a state of flux at the moment. And but personally, from a creative point of view, doing
Mm-hmm.
your own work, uh,
Mm-hmm.
for individual filmmakers and creators, it's going to become these tools are going to free up a lot of the ability to create your own work, because all of a sudden now you don't need, excuse me, you don't need a whole studio to produce something. If you don't need a whole, and it sounds awful because people are going to be losing their jobs, but you if you use the tools to help you put your own stuff out there, right? That's the exciting part. Um, it might change too the studio system. I mean, will executives who run studio systems who make these creative and business decisions, they might these jobs might be changing as well, right? So, um, but from a personal point of view, I think it's very exciting. The trick is to still have your own voice and your own vision and be able to um, to be original and just be,
Original,
get your
100%.
own stuff
100%.
out. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what's one lesson you have learned over the years and that you think every animator or director should know no matter where they are in their career?
Um, One piece of advice is that things go up and down, and if you have the passion, stick at it, because success comes and success goes. It's just the way. I mean, it's life really. So having that resilience and that drive to I mean, understand what success is. Sometimes success isn't getting to Pixar. Sometimes
Absolutely.
success is just staying in there and going on this road that you
Hmm.
don't know sometimes where you're going to end up. But I look back at my career and there was specific places I wanted to be, and it didn't happen. But I got directed just through circumstance and being referred or whatever to some really fascinating and interesting experiences. So I think enjoy the journey, right? Don't get too hung up like, oh my God, nothing's happening.
Uh-huh.
And also continually working on, improving your skills. That's the other very
Absolutely.
important thing,
Absolutely.
because technology in my career, technology's gone, like when I first started, the Apple Mac was invented, right? The little Macintosh, which blew everyone away. And we everything was done on film, right? And film was never going to go away because, but technology has is increased and gotten faster and better, and these tools have become so amazing. The internet, we didn't have the internet. We had a library when I was a kid, art school. So books. So, when I was teaching, I'm like, oh my goodness, these students have so many resources, right? That they can just be stimulated by. But yeah, so I think always be training yourself and always be learning the new tools just so you can stay relevant. And also have a life, right? Travel, still have, do things that because do things that are just you know, keep you balanced in life, right? The exercise,
Mm-hmm.
meditate if you're into
If you can.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, I do yoga and I swim, and I surf, read books. I mean, just keep yourself very, open to lots of different creative inputs
Absolutely. So,
and
do
watch
you have
films.
watch films?
Watch films and
Absolutely.
animation. Yes, watch
All right.
lots
So,
of films.
do you have a moment in your career where you thought this is it, and I'm doing exactly what I meant to do?
Uh, Not really. I'm always like, what's the next thing? I get to a stage, I'm like, oh, I've done that. That's fantastic. Oh, what am I going to do next? So, well, the next thing for me is I'm going to give myself a bit of time once I've finished this latest project, and I'm going to start developing uh, some of my own intellectual property because I'm at a stage now, personally and professionally, that I think I can direct and I've got a very good sense of what makes a good story.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the next stage that I actually show run. So
Great. Mm-hmm.
and the interesting thing now though is that traditionally you pitch your stuff to a studio or to, if you're in a country that like Australia or Canada, you pitch it to the government to get funding, or you go to marketplaces to get the funds.
Mm-hmm.
But now with YouTube and I mean all these digital Vimeo, you can actually
Yeah.
just put things straight out, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, so it's a very exciting time. You don't need to have these big corporations to actually fund it. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, so it is a very exciting time for creators at the moment compared to what it was. Oh my God, in the 90s when I started.
Yeah.
So
So,
that's my next
mhm.
stage.
So when working on the Baby Boss series, how did
Mhm.
you approach the character animation to balance humor with heart, especially for such a unique character?
Well, we were very lucky in that show because they'd made a feature film. They made a feature film that was
Uh-huh.
very successful.
Uh-huh.
The writer, showrunner on Boss Baby, there was the two executive producers. It was their first show that they'd ever done in that role, and the writer also he actually wrote on the feature, so he knew the characters very well. So I just went to the feature and I worked out, performance for each of the characters. We had to introduce a whole bunch of new little characters, into the show. So I used the same method as I described earlier, even though it was a very cartoony show and it's a kids friendly show. I still created these very in-depth characters for them. Yeah, so the key characters, Tim and Boss, and the parents, even though they recast the voice actors because of budgetary reasons, we had the guts of them who they were in the show, and then from
Mm-hmm.
that we just expanded out. So that
Mm-hmm.
show, it was more the brief in that show was keeping it true to the feature because between they made the feature, made the show, then they made another feature,
Another
they made
feature.
another show,
I'm in another show.
and and it was extremely successful. The show was one of the biggest kid shows ever on Netflix. Apparently, it was extremely popular in Asia. I heard, like especially in
Mm-hmm.
Japan, it was massive.
Mm-hmm.
So Netflix was very, very happy with the results from Boss
Yeah.
Baby back in business and Boss Baby back in the crib.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so there you go. That was that on that occasion. We had the blueprint already created for us.
Great. So that's it. So thank you so much, Andrew, joining us, and we hope everyone enjoyed this insightful conversation. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time. Thank you.